My full name is Susan Linda Hercombe. I was born Susan Linda Boundy. I was born on the 6th of July 1945, and I was born in Croydon, in Surrey, as it was in those days. My parents, my mother was Ada Isabel Bly, and she married my father, who was Albert Boundy. He didn't have a middle name. He was Albert after Prince Albert. And they met in Croydon. My father's father had drunk himself to death, sad to say. He came from a very well-to-do family. When he first married grandmother, they were so wealthy they lived in hotels. But he drank all his money away, and she finished up working as a lavatory attendant and looking at raising her 3 sons. She got a council house, so she was definitely from riches to rags and not rags to riches. My mother's parents were EastEnders, and he was a docker, and I think my grandmother just used to look after everybody else's children in the road, and whether anybody paid her for that, I don't know, but there was always hordes of children sort of round her. And it was very difficult to get to see them because they were still over in Leytonstone, and we were in Croydon. And it would be a long, tough journey to get there. I was brought up in what was then normal household of mother staying at home, father going to work. I have a sister. Her name's Anne. And we used to do most things together, which was going to Sunday school on a Sunday, off to school during the week, round to the recreation ground, playing on the bomb sites. That was great fun. We used to be told that we shouldn't, but of course we did. I left home when I was 20 years old, which was when I got married. I left school at 16 with a clutch of O-levels and went and worked up in London. And I had met my husband almost on the day that I left school. We got engaged when I was 17 and married when I was 20, and he was 24. John, my husband, was an electrical engineer and a radio engineer, and he secured a post going abroad, which we thought was very exotic. So exotic we had to get the atlas out to find where the devil Borneo was. But so we were in Borneo. Very difficult saying goodbye to family at Heathrow because there were no direct flights. You would get on a Comet and go from A to B to C to D for refuelling stages, and then we had to stay the night in Singapore. That was very exotic. We stayed in the Raffles Hotel, which I had never heard of at that time, but there were turbaned Sikhs behind every potted palm in immaculate white outfits, and that was great fun. And we went into the long bar and crunched peanuts and threw the shells on the floor, as you're supposed to do while you have your Singapore sling. And then the next day we got on another little plane and hopped across to Borneo. So when I got there, it was lovely and warm and balmy and gorgeous, but so boring. Husbands, of course, all had jobs. That was lovely. Jobs probably above their normal expectations when they were that young. And they had John's job was to install a new telephone exchange, which was halfway up the side of Mount Kinabalu, or was that the relay station? I forget now. At any rate, He often had to go up the mountain, I know that much. And we twiddled our thumbs. I learnt to play mahjong. I typed the examination papers for the education department because they couldn't. No, I better not say that. I typed the examination papers for the education department. So it was one little thing I did. And I volunteered for the family planning unit, where I sat behind a little desk, and as the ladies came in, you would ask them their name and which village they came from and what religion they had, and then give them a ticket, and they would sit down and then go in and see the doctor. And that was all very well until suddenly I started to have a protruding stomach myself, and it was very hard to persuade these ladies that this was a planned pregnancy and not just an accident. So I had to give that up. At the end of the 3 years of being in Borneo, during which we did have a trip to Malaya, you had to get out of the heat and the humidity for after 2 years. It was mandatory. So we had to go up to the Cameron Highlands and spend a long weekend where we got fresh milk and strawberries, which we hadn't had for 2 years. And when the contract finally ended, we used the equivalent money of a direct flight home to divide it up into travelling around the world, so that we had in fact finished up going all the way around the world once. So we went from Borneo to Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan. We went to I'm not sure if it's the Kyoto or the Tokyo in 1970, the exposition, Expo 70, it was known as short. And then we went on to America. We landed in either San Francisco or Los Angeles, hired a car and drove all the way down the coast. We have this vivid memory of seeing a signpost saying Benz for the next 76 miles or some such thing. And then we went up into Yellowstone Park and so on, up into Toronto, back down to New York, had a look round New York, and then got on a plane and flew home, back to England, and all with a 15-month-old small child. So that was all quite hairy. We swore when we got back that we weren't going anywhere near an airport for a long, long time. And in fact, one of our 3 sons didn't get on a plane till he was 20 because we refused to go anywhere. We went to Europe, but we would do that by ferry or driving or whatever. Where was the favourite place? Oh, I suppose for exotic, it's got to be Bali. We worked abroad again. 30 years after we'd been in Borneo, we went to Jakarta. And we had a lovely, lovely holiday in Bali. And that was before that wretched bomb blew up there. And it was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. I've never really had one. We came back with one child. We soon had another, and then we had another. So we had a little gaggle of 3 boys, all under 4 years of age, and was lucky enough that John's salary was good enough to support all of us. So I was a full-time mother at home. I had just been a sort of secretarial post between the age of 16 and 20 up in London, but which was where I learnt to type and that sort of thing. But I was a full-time mum, and then I decided that the nursery school playgroups, they were called in those days, that our 3 boys had all gone to, really could have done a bit more with these children. He used to get a load of toys out, put them on the floor, and the kids would get on a load of tractors or trikes and charge around the room for about an hour and a half, and then they were sat down and given a drink and a biscuit, and somebody read a story, and home they all went at the end of it. So I thought there was probably a little bit more you could do to engage with these kids. So I went on a playgroup leaders course and then started my own playgroup, which was called a kindergarten. Sounded a little more upmarket. But and just got that underway, just got a full quota of children and a happy little waiting list when I discovered I was expecting our daughter. So that I handed all that over to somebody else, and I went back to being a full-time mum again. I think doors and windows are being opened up onto subjects that were very taboo, and I think that is only to be applauded. I think the secrecies, lies and secrets and lies that used to go on, and how people were hounded for their how people were hounded for how they were, which they can't help. I think that was dreadful. And I think that hopefully people are more tolerant of race and sex and everything else now. So yes, I think the world is a bit more tolerant now. Oh, the biggest problems facing us today. Oh, dare I say Donald Trump? I don't know, because when I was either just engaged or newly married, I can remember thinking that the world was going to blow up the next day because of the Cuban Missile Crisis. And thank goodness we don't seem to have come to anything quite as dramatic as that for a long, long while. So I think that one should be very careful. There's this wonderful statement, moderation in all things, moderation in everything you eat. Obviously, obesity is becoming very, very much the topic of conversation, and I think it is very sad when you think that parents have allowed their children to become so large that they wobble. I think that's a great sadness. But what you do about it, I think we have to leave to Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall, who seems to be leading the charge with Jamie Oliver. Good for them, I say. Oh, having 4 children? No. As a woman, gosh. I suppose I'm pleased to have had 4 children and been able to raise them and hopefully send them out into the world. And I think not enough emphasis maybe is put on being able to do that as a full-time occupation. I think it's great for women to be able to do exactly what they want to do. So if today's mothers want to go out to work, good for them. But I wouldn't have wanted the pressures that they're all under today. I wouldn't have wanted those pressures on my shoulders. So. Oh, it's got to be live and let live. Most people are decent, nice people, and leave them alone to love one another and to not interfere too much in other people's lives. What they do is their business, as long as it doesn't impact or harm anybody else. Gosh, I don't think so. I don't dwell on whether or not things were all to the good or to the bad. You make your decisions and your choices at the time. I can't recall having made anything that was so detrimental that I would rather I hadn't done it. So, no, I don't have a lot of remorses. No point in that. You do exactly what you want to do. Don't let others try to push you down a different path to the one that you see for yourself. And try to be happy. Happiness is a very important thing in life.